Hello, Ian. How are you?
Very good. Good. Great to talk to you.
Ian, you're the person who has been using Salesforce the longest. And so tell us, where did you start using Salesforce?
Well, so it's not the longest. There were clearly people in the US started slightly before us, but we were very, very early in. It was 2001, I think. And I can remember we were using a CRM or Salesforce automation sitting on a PC, but we had like people in multiple countries and we were trying to work out how to share data. And then this thing, it wasn't called cloud then, it was called ASP, so application software provider. Anyway, so there's this thing called Salesforce popped up with software that was in the cloud essentially, so we could all share it. So I went, well, my CTO and I said, well, this is a good idea. Let's take a look at it. And we went and talked to two people in a shared office outside London. And they were the only two people working for Salesforce in London, in the UK at that time. And they sold us on this dream of data in the cloud. You can access it anywhere. And it pretty much started there. There were 5 objects: lead, contact, account, opportunity, and I think forecast. So really simple in those days.
Wow. Do you recall how much did it cost? One license. Today, average license, I think, costs around $100. I'm curious how much did this cost then?
Well, there you go. So the first 10 licenses were free, and all the force.com builder licenses were free forever. So if you were simply building apps, so you didn't need accounts and contacts, that was free forever, I think. But you've got to bear in mind, in those early days, this was a brand new technology sitting in the cloud. The cloud was not trusted by anybody.
Oh, really?
Gartner, the analyst, said that people would kill it because it wasn't like who would trust having their data in the cloud. So there were big issues. So Salesforce pretty much was like it had to do whatever to get people to be early adopters. And now everyone wants a CRM. But there it was like this was novel. They wanted people on the platform. Mark was on a road. It was a city tour, talking to as many people as he could find who were prepared to take a risk.
So this was like Bitcoin or NFT back then, yeah, something.
Yeah, I think it's
Novel.
a little bit like GPT is at the moment. And you might go, well, GPT is being used by lots of people. It is, but it's not being used by corporates. The big companies are still going, oh, I'm not sure. Why would I trust my data to some AI player like OpenAI? It's exactly the same stories we had back in 2001, which is, well, actually more than that, all the way up to 2007. I remember presenting at a CIO conference, and there were financial services companies, we're never going to have our data in the cloud. Pharmaceutical, never have our data in the cloud. It's not safe. And now look, Viva, Encino, 2 big Salesforce platform players that have actually floated. They're huge revenue companies with data in the cloud. And we've got the same thing now with people going, oh, we're not going to do anything security. We're really worried about having our data pass through OpenAI. Again, over time, people will get more confident, and then things will move forward fairly quickly.
And do you recall how many licenses did you buy, or just get enough to be on the free?
Oh, no. We had one for everyone in the company. So our approach was, if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. We're going to kill off every spreadsheet we've got, every little app. We actually built 300 custom objects. So we built out procurement, HR, hosting, because we actually had our own product was hosted. So we had all the definition of our servers. We had compliance. So if somebody as a new person joined, we hit a button, a bunch of workflows, provisioned them, sent stuff out. We built a fairly sophisticated application sitting on top of Salesforce. So therefore, everybody in the company had a license.
Wow. And what was your role in that company?
I
You were
was
the
the CEO.
CEO.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was really exciting. It felt like we were sort of groundbreaking. We were on the cusp of something new, and it feels a little bit like that with GPT now. We're at the early stages of. I mean, OpenAI launched GPT apps last week, and suddenly we're trying to make sense of what that means. Huge technology revolution that we're going through now, which we went through back in 2000 and something when it was the cloud.
Oh, you're early adopter of like frontier technologies. cloud?
Yeah, we're not the earliest. I mean, I think the earliest are people who adopt technology because it's fun and interesting. We are the next stage, which is early adopters. We'll adopt technology when we can see a business case, when there's some business reasons. And we weren't playing with AI 20 years ago. We're playing with AI now. We can actually see some real business benefits coming out of it. But yeah, we are. I mean, as a company, we're in early. We always and we're committed. Yeah, let's do this. If we're going to do it, let's go in 100%.
You said you believed in Salesforce because you had a team across the globe, and you wanted everyone to make it convenient to log in, and you can like have a view on all the reports of what everybody's doing. Like,
yeah, Customer 360. Before we had multiple systems trying to synchronize each other in different countries. So the cloud meant, fine, we'll have our ability to spin up a new operation in a new country. I think we had about 14 different countries by the end. I can't remember, 11 maybe, whatever. But the point is, the ability to spin up an operation in a new country didn't require buying hardware, installing software, trying to sync it to a main central. It was just give them a laptop, give them a computer, give them a login, and they're off and running.
So this made a lot of business sense. It was a big cost saver.
Oh, absolutely huge, massive cost saver in terms of, but it's not just cost saving, it's about agility. And I think even nowadays, Salesforce is about agility, but it's like, it enabled us to grow more quickly, to respond more quickly to things. We built a Customer 360. It was like the view. If it wasn't in Salesforce, it didn't exist. It was the central view of all of our customer data from a support side, from a consulting perspective, from selling them software.
And having your company use Salesforce, did it allow you to be more successful, generate more revenue, outcompete really?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of effort it would take to get all the data in one place to make decent decisions. You've got to bear in mind, the only reason you have a CRM is so that you can make decisions, support customers, make decisions about when something going to close. So we can actually make investment decisions. It's about what level of support do we need to give a customer. It's about closing those support calls more quickly. All of that information needed to be centrally held. And before it wasn't. So I think the other thing is we wouldn't have been able to afford something like Siebel, like a full-on CRM. We needed it, but we wouldn't have been able to afford it. With Salesforce, we were buying licenses as we use them. As we hired more people, we bought more licenses. Rather than going to a big software vendor that says, right, well, you need to buy at least 1,000 licenses upfront, and if you don't use them, then don't worry, you'll use them over time. So the whole cloud model as well about consumption services was very different. It was very, very compelling in terms of a way of working.
You mentioned that the first 10 licenses were free and the rest you had to pay. How much was a license, if you couldn't recall, like $10, $20?
No, it was a bit more than that, but it was probably 30 or 40. 30,
40? Pretty good, right?
I mean, it wasn't insignificant because we were buying a lot of licenses.
Yeah.
But again, you're not buying hardware, you're not installing hardware, you're not buying operating systems, all of that upfront cost. So hang on. At the same time, we wrote a couple of books. One of them is here. Thinking of buying a cloud solution. There we go. So at the time, everyone was starting to get into using the cloud. And I was on Microsoft's advisory board, their partner advisory board, for 4 years. And we ushered in the cloud. So we wrote a couple of books about not the answers, but all the questions you need to consider. I mean, nowadays you wouldn't even think about it, but there were the questions then, people going, I'm worried about buying a cloud, using a cloud application. What are all the considerations? And we had a list here of all the questions that you should consider. So that was the first book. I wonder if I can find the other one. Oh, there it is. So this one here, think of using force.com as your key to the cloud kingdom. Really, it's thinking of building a force.com app for the App Exchange. So we wrote the book about the things to think about. When we wrote this, 2010. But what's interesting is foreword written by Parker Harris. So even in 2010, this was 10 years after we started, there was still a big push to go, right, why would you build an app on the App Exchange? Because you bear in mind, the App Exchange didn't open until, was it about 2007? So up until then, there really weren't apps you could buy. You had to go and build everything. So 2007 onwards, there was the App Exchange, and then there was a big push to get people to build proper applications rather than like small utilities. And then roll the clock forward another 10 years, and you've got a company the size of Encino for banking, or Viva for pharmaceutical, or Financial Force, which is now ERP.
Being an early adopter, you were what, you think, maybe first 10 customers in UK?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, 2000 and 2002, Mark Benioff came to the UK to do a presentation. There were 120 people in the room. That was the audience. There were 3 customers, and I was one of them.
Yeah, 3 customers. Okay, let's say you were one of the first 3 customers. If we
Well, there were 3
all
customers presenting, but it was tiny. I mean, we were literally the early adopters, all going, hang on, we're like looking around, going, we're all in this together, I guess. It's good. It's exciting. Who could have predicted where we got to now, though?
Being an early adopter, when you're implementing certain things, like how did you figure out how things should work? Like there were no YouTube videos, probably there was no Trailhead, like then probably there was limited documentation. There was no like Deloitte you can hire. How did you figure it out?
You got to bear in mind that the 3 of us who set the company up had come out of other businesses. I'd been a partner at Accenture. I'd run big change programs. I'd implemented software for major programs. In the early days, Salesforce implementations were really simple. There were only 5 objects and a bit of custom, and you could build some Apex. So it wasn't big programs you had to worry about. It was quite a narrow scope.
So it's just like data entry, adding fields. What could you do back then? Like record types?
You couldn't build any workflows. You could build Apex.
Apex existed from the early days?
Yeah, because it was built in Apex. And then there were some rudimentary workflows you could start to do, but nothing very complicated. So here's an interesting story. The person who was our admin was a woman called Lucy Mills, and she was probably in her late 20s. And at the time, most admins were from IT, so a bunch of sort of guys from IT. And I believe they ran a program. There was a marketing program called Be Like Lucy, which is they were trying to encourage more non-IT people to become admins. And that was in the very, very early days, because I remember we went to Dreamforce and there was a picture about 60 foot high of Lucy as we walked in. It's like, oh, look, there you are. And she works at Salesforce. I think she's very senior in the sales area. An AVP or an RVP. So she was one of the very, very early admins in Salesforce, and again, quite unusual in didn't come out of a technology world, and also being a woman.
At the time you adopted Salesforce, how big was the revenue?
Oh, I don't remember.
How many people do you think they had? Like overall, 100 people?
Yeah, probably. They only had 2 in the UK office. They had a few in Dublin, and obviously they had people in the US. So maybe it was 100 people. It was very early stages. And again, it was, bear in mind, as an early adopter, you're taking a huge risk.
Yeah.
So we were saying, right, all our data is going to sit somewhere on a server somewhere. If the company goes down, what happens to all that data? There are risks with being an early adopter, but obviously you weigh them up against the benefits of the flexibility that we got. But I do know that a lot of the early sales were made without IT knowing about them. So they would talk to the business would go and start using Salesforce, and the IT departments in organizations didn't hear about it. And I got involved in a big program where they were trying to engage the CIOs and the IT managers to say Salesforce wasn't the enemy. It was actually sort of helping rather than fighting against IT.
Wow.
And of course, there was only one mascot. There was Sassy, the mascot that said no software. And again, we've had some, if you think about the different phases we've been through, there was a phase when Chatter got launched, about 2007-8. If Chatter had the investment, it would have turned into Slack. But for some reason, it just never got the love that it needed. And it stayed as a very simple feedback discussion rather than anything more capable than that. No idea why. And there used to be a little Chatter mascot.
Wow.
There we go. It was a little circular thing called Chatty that looked like Sassy. But unfortunately, he's disappeared now.
So it's been 22 years that you've been on Salesforce. It's like the age of many new admins even. Yeah.
Well, that's true. Yeah. That's not very fair. That's actually makes me feel very old. Bear in mind, this wasn't my first career. I'd actually done some other stuff before this, so it's not.
It's amazing. It's amazing that you were an early adopter. You were a partner at Accenture before that, right? You've been in technology for a while. In your, it's like being an early adopter of Microsoft or like Apple. Yeah, you were at the very early days. Of the technology, and so I'm very curious to hear your opinion of what were some key events in the 22 years of you seeing Salesforce grow.
I think the first major event was when the cloud got validated. And other companies were going, actually, when it got called the cloud, and when companies were going, okay, this is the way forward. Because you've got to bear in mind the very early days of Oracle were going, no, the cloud will know that's never going to be a thing. So I think the fact that people then started adopting it, going, yes, this is a real thing. I think that was one major step. The App Exchange, clearly, the ability to actually get partners to go and be able to build applications. But that was all built on the ability to actually customize Salesforce. So the fact there was an App Exchange, because in the early days, the App Exchange didn't really have any real applications in there. It had a few little utilities that people had built, but then there was a real push to get proper applications that people would spend money on into the App Exchange. We used Financial Force, which is an accounting package, which was one of the first ones that came out. That was quite painful, but eventually got their act together, and actually the product was quite good by the end. So that was a major step. I think Mark's view about seeing it was all about collaboration and launching Chatter, again, visionary in terms of what he'd done then. Now Salesforce is the number one. It's the market leader. It's now trying to work out how to behave as the market leader. It can't be the scrappy startup. It has to be like the polished leader, rather than going, oh, well, we're a startup, and what do you expect? The answer is no, we expect you to be actually setting the absolute top bar in terms of the way things work, the way releases come out, the performance and everything else. So there's a real spotlight on Salesforce now to be, and you'll start to see other companies coming in underneath. So like a HubSpot or a Pipedrive, or those companies are chipping away and going, right, well, you're not looking after, say, the lower mid-market properly, or you're not looking after this area here. And therefore, Salesforce is clearly moving up into the upper enterprise layers. And then the last piece is the community. I mean, the community was always there from the early days, but it is probably the biggest differentiator is actually how the fact that you and I are talking. You're not gaining any revenue out of this. I'm not gaining any revenue out of this, but we're happy to contribute to the community.
Yes.
Yeah, that is something which is remarkable. That was there from the very beginning, and it's grown and grown and grown. It's been a huge plus point for Salesforce.
Yeah, and I've been always curious. Salesforce for me is the first and only technology I know. Yeah, I'm a career changer, and for me, like community, Salesforce community is awesome, but that's the only thing I know, and I cannot compare it. You have, though, a lot of experience probably across different technologies. Like you said, you wrote a book about Microsoft, and so you can compare the community of Salesforce versus others. Based on what you say, seems Salesforce community is stronger. Why is this the case? What makes Salesforce community more vibrant or more tight?
Because it's a growing opportunity all the time. Okay, so if you're in a technology where it's not growing very quickly, you are in competition with everybody else for jobs, or if you're a consultant for opportunities. The Salesforce ecosystem has been growing so much that I'm not fighting you for a job. We can all happily lift each other up because we know that the market's getting bigger and bigger. So I think that probably helps build this feeling that actually we're all in here to help each other. And they've done a great job of actually the early user groups, things like the MVP program, where they were giving recognition to those people who were supporting it. They've done a very good job of essentially gamifying all of that. Mm-hmm. And the MVP raised up some leaders, and I saw the MVP nominations have just gone through again. So it's the community voting for the community, rather than someone in Salesforce corporate somewhere voting for the community people. So the dreaming events, they're only run by the community. Salesforce has no input whatsoever, unless one of the business units happens to sponsor.
That's true. I agree. Those are brilliant moves. And I even enjoy the dreaming events more than the official events because they're more cozy. I get to know the speakers, the attendees better. Then these huge.
Yeah, and also you haven't got the Salesforce sales pitch as well.
Yes.
Salesforce positioning all the time.
Yes.
It's a little bit more, a little bit rawer, a little bit. It's a little bit closer to the truth. A little bit.
Like a village meeting.
Yes, and that's what it is. Someone said to me, Salesforce is my church, and it wasn't from a religious perspective, but the fact that a church is quite often is the center of a community.
Yes.
In a village, an English village, or in a US village, or wherever, the church is central to it. It draws people together, and I think that there's that, and I think COVID actually broke apart a lot of those communities, and it's taken us a while to rebuild those. But I think because we've got the Salesforce ecosystem, it's working, and those communities are being rebuilt, which is good.
Ian, based on your 22 years of experience and what you've seen Salesforce acquire, they acquired a lot of companies. What do you think was the worst acquisition they made?
Well, there are a number of acquisitions which have never, ever gone anywhere. So work.com was an acquisition. It wasn't a URL they bought. I can't remember what work.com did. They then reused the URL for all the COVID related stuff. So there are a number of acquisitions which didn't quite work out, but I think they're overshadowed by the really smart acquisitions they've made, such as Exact Target. So they bought so they created Marketing Cloud. I think the jury is still out around Slack.com. I understand the business reason for the acquisition, but I think there are some very different cultural differences between the two organizations, and making that work is proving slightly harder than I think they expected. But from a technology perspective, it makes complete sense. It's interesting in the AI space. I mean, OpenAI is too big to acquire, and it's a platform play now. But Salesforce is obviously 100% or 110% in on AI, and it's started to make a few sort of tuck-in acquisitions I've seen. But I think there's still a while. We've got another year or two before we see that really playing out.
If we look forward, are you excited about where Salesforce is going? If your kid or your grandkids were asking you, what technology should I learn? Should I be a front-end developer? Should I be a software engineer? Or should I be a Salesforce developer? Would you tell them to be go the Salesforce path?
Okay, so yes, I think Salesforce is technology everybody needs. I mean, everybody who's got customers, whether they are customers or whether they are donors, if you're in the nonprofit world, or they're students and faculty in the education world, everyone's going to put that in a database somewhere. So first of all, CRM is always going to be around. Secondly, I think AI sitting on top of CRM has a very interesting way, is a very different interface. Why not have a conversation with your data rather than actually having to run reports? So I think Salesforce's play around AI and CRM is absolutely correct. I would not advise anyone to become a developer. I'd advise them to go further up the food chain, go be a business analyst. I think the more technology is around that can write its own code, then as a developer, then I think you're at greater risk. But at the front end, the business analysis, the consultants, the people who are actually helping people change the way their business works, that will always be around, and that's a well-paid job. I always used to say that you get paid based on the size of the problems you fix. So if you're running a project team with 200 or 300 people, they are big problems, and you get paid well for that.
Really? That's controversial. Yeah. That'll be the title for the video. Maybe for one of the videos is Ian says BA instead of a dev.
Oh, absolutely BA every time.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
But Ian, there is so much more competition for BAs because the barrier to becoming a BA is lower. Because if you're a good speaker, fluent in English, you understand business processes, you can become a BA. But being a developer is much harder.
Becoming a BA and not a very good BA is probably easy. Becoming a good business analyst at the top of the game, a good project manager, a good program manager, because that's the route you go. I mean, become a project manager or program manager. If you're a developer, I mean, you're there writing code. Some of it will be written by Copilot. Some of it will be eliminated by low-code apps.
Yes.
Now, I'm always for solving the bigger problems. You're a program manager, you're a project manager. The route to that is through the analysis side. That route isn't from the developer. I mean, If you're technical, I'd go the architecture route. Architects are, again, solving big problems. The implications of a badly architected solution are huge. I love developers, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily what I'd advise people to be doing. And if you, again, you've got to be clear. We've only got a certain number of hours on the planet. You need to do stuff that lights you up and gets you excited. If you're a developer, then and you love that, let's not force you into being something you're not. Okay. But if you said, where's the best place to look if you had there was no biases, I'd be business analyst, moving to being a platform owner, being the person who's responsible for either driving a big program of Salesforce, being a center of excellence leader. But that's just because I come out of a consulting world. That's the stuff I like doing.
But you're a developer yourself too.
No, hang on, no. In terms of low code, yeah, absolutely, because I understand how applications are built.
But you created this Salesforce event list, right?
Yeah, but that's low code. There's no code anywhere there.
There's no code there, really? It's just all HTML, CSS?
It's all drag and drop low code. I built a very sophisticated application for managing the band, all drag and drop using something called Bubble. No, I find it. I wouldn't recognize Apex or JavaScript. I wouldn't know what to do with it.
Wow, I was thinking, wow, how did they so fast deploying, boom, boom, making these changes?
But that's the point. Is that, but you also bear in mind, again, I'm really old. So if you remember, go back, people used to write assembler. So you wrote assembler and then you gave it to a computer to run. And people went, oh, that's really hard to understand. So then people started writing procedural languages like COBOL or BASIC, which again, were just taking that assembler. And then people went, okay, well, let's move it up another layer. And then suddenly you've got the next iteration of this. So you've got sort of JavaScript and HTML, where, again, I'm not having to write hard code. We're just moving our way up the chain. So like Bubble, yeah, you can write JavaScript. And I've written some little bits of JavaScript, but most of it is drag and drop. But the only reason I can do that is because I understand the business process. I understand data models. I understand what I'm trying to achieve from it. Those are all the business analysis skills. The technical skills are only a small part of that.
Very interesting. That's why I love talking to smart people, because they break my paradigms.
But bear in mind, all the things I'm talking about, none of those have changed. I mean, that's what I was doing when I first joined Accenture in 1986. Okay, everyone's going, oh, the cloud's made it all different. It kind of hasn't. The cloud's just made one part of the deployment easier. You don't have to install software. You don't have to install hardware. Everything else is the same. So there you go. This is right below your mind. This is the Accenture methodology for how you implement systems. Okay. Find the right page. And it basically goes, these are all the steps you go through, and these are all the documents you need. Okay. And it is dated 1979. And you might say the cloud's made it all irrelevant. And the answer is, of the 19 boxes on there, only 2 are not valid. Only 2. Hardware installation and software installation. Everything else in the methodology which you go through, you need to do still. And I think that's what people are discovering. In the early days of Salesforce, people went, oh, this is easy. We don't need to think about it. Just build it. It's amazing. No one had heard the word architecture. No one had thought about business analysis. It was a very narrowly scoped product. It was basically, you bang in your contacts and your leads and you do something with it. We've now got massively complex systems that you can build with Salesforce. And this sort of discipline is actually what's now required, which is why we've got well architected. It's why we've got center of excellence. It's why we've got enterprise tooling like Elements. So a lot of the things which we've been doing for years and years are now, because Salesforce is becoming large and strategic, are important. Yeah, there's a different spin because of cloud, but pretty much lots of the things I've been doing for the last 30 years, I'm still doing. I learned Bubble because I needed to build some apps to run the band and do other things, and it spiraled from there. Suddenly we created the SF events list for all the events. Before that, by the way, that application was used for tracking, and still is, all the parties at Dreamforce. So we built a version of the app for all the parties at Dreamforce. It had 15,000 views over the course of Dreamforce. So we've now extended it for all the Salesforce events, but you've heard it here first. I'm extending it for GPT apps. So you know now that OpenAI has launched it, so you can now create your own GPT apps. There's no directory. No one knows how to get to these things. So we say, well, let's just extend the SF list to a B GPT list.
There's no GPT store, or like?
Well, there will be, but you think if the whole world is creating GPT apps, the Salesforce ones are going to get buried. No one's going to know where they are.
GPT Salesforce store or like list, yeah?
Yeah, but it'll be called SF GPT list, I guess. But anyway, but it's not just the list, it's the list and then the prompts that you can use associated with those apps. Because the apps are only useful when you know what good prompts are.
Ian, you do so many amazing things. You write Forbes articles, you have Salesforce Bernardo, you have a side project like the Salesforce event list, which is like pretty awesome, which is like something that even Salesforce themselves doesn't do. And you have a company with 100 people that you run, and you make time to talk to me. How do you manage your life?
Because hey, this stuff's important. Part of it is I've got a great team, which gives me the space to do this kind of stuff and think about different things. Yeah, you put a good team around you. It gives you the space to contribute. And the more I put back into the Salesforce ecosystem, the more that comes back out again. You can't go, okay, I'm going to do that now. Okay, how do I get my payback? I have no idea where this will go, but I'm happy talking to you because it's helping you and your listeners progress in the ecosystem. If we do that, then we all win. I've no idea what will come out. It could be someone goes, I'd love to come and work for the company. They're an amazing employee. Someone says, oh, I'd love to be a consulting firm working alongside you. There might be a customer. I've no idea. It doesn't matter. The ecosystem is such that if you put energy in, more comes back out. And provided you don't try and look for it, then karma works for you. I'm also very lucky. The other two founders, I've been together for 20 years, Richard and Adrian. Having two other guys who I trust, we know we've all got different roles, but we all work together, particularly through 20 years. Think how many business changes we've gone through. And
last question, Ian.
Okay.
This is a question on behalf of a lot young people who want to make it in life, who want to get ahead in the IT space. Imagine someone who's like 22, 25 years old, and he wants to be successful. And your track record is amazing. You've been a partner at Accenture. You were CEO of a company that was one of the early adopters of Salesforce. And now you have a very successful App Exchange product. What are 3 tips you would give someone so they can get ahead in life?
Okay, that's easy. So there are not 3 tips, but 3 skills that I think everybody needs, no matter what job they're in, whether it's trying to be in Salesforce or you want to be a songwriter or you want to be a teacher, it doesn't matter. 3 skills. Number 1, be good at presenting. So that might be presenting on stage, but I mean, this is a presentation. We're having a conversation, being good at presenting. And all these 3 skills I'm going to talk about all come with practice. So the first is get good at presenting. The second is get good at writing. I don't believe ChatGPT and others will replace writing. You need to be good at writing. And that means structuring writing and structuring things well, writing articles. So get good at writing. 1 is presenting. Number 2 is writing. And number 3 is networking. Being able to walk into a room, being able to meet people relatively quickly and actually be good at networking and building those connections. And all 3 of those have learned skills. I'm slightly introverted. So the idea of actually not being on stage and presenting, like that's hard. It's a learned skill. I remember when I first joined Accenture, I wrote a proposal and the partner said to me, tell you what, why don't we give this to a bright arts graduate and they can write it properly? I went, no, stop. Okay. If you want me to actually improve, put me on a writing course because writing is important. So I was awful at writing. And then networking. You walk into a room that's full of people. There's some things you can learn to get good at networking. So I think those 3 skills, writing, presenting, and networking, get good at those. And it doesn't matter what you do, what career you want to go into, then I think you'll do well.
Ian, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. It's been fantastic talking to you.